Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. Getting into the dog days of summer, mid-July now. The Stampede's out of the way. I don't have my excuse to wear jeans to work anymore, so I just have my usual poor wardrobe. Eventually we'll get a wardrobe department and I can be dressed better, but until then, blame the frugal ways of the Western Standard for not buying me a new sport coat. All right, lots to cover, though. We're looking forward to I got a guest coming on, Tim Hagstrom. You've probably seen some of those stories going on. He was to say the least, roughly treated by the University of Saskatchewan for daring to just try to question some of the policies of DEI and other exceptions made, I guess for exam lengths and things like that with students. He'll explain that, and now he's bringing a suit against the University of Saskatchewan. It's good to see people not backing off in light of those sorts of things. I'll be checking in with Jen in a few minutes here to get the latest on the news. And yes, I'll be talking. There's a lot of justice things going on today, I guess you could say. So good to see you guys checking in there. Gord Tulk, North Run Grader, and Paradoxy. Gord saying terminal, really? Gord, it's social media, they're headlines, and yes, they are eye catchers. And actually, I'm going to start, though. I mean, I appreciate the questions on what's got me wound up and why I feel that our justice system is terminal and broken. This is something that's been making the news recently. So on July 29th, 2023, and I'm only going to pronounce his first name once, Rukanisha, and they call him Nakunda, but he was stabbed to death by a random stranger when he tried to ride the LRT in Edmonton. He was 54 years old. He's left 7 children behind. Ironically, he'd escaped the violent, impoverished world of Congo, only to be murdered due to Canada's pathetic justice system. Jamal Wheeler killed Nakunda in cold blood. He didn't know his victim, and he wasn't provoked by his victim. Wheeler has a thing for trying to kill people at LRT stations. Yeah, he's been doing this for years. He'd been convicted with attacking people with pepper spray at one station. He'd been convicted for pushing a person onto the train tracks at another station after he beat on him. And he'd been convicted of attacking people with an axe at a station. What do? We kept letting him out. Limp-wristed sentencing ensured Wheeler was released repeatedly until he finally managed to kill a man. Now, Wheeler has reached the apex of his criminal career so far. He's stolen the life from an innocent man. So what was his sentence? Well, he's going to be free in 4.5 years to kill somebody else, folks. Rest assured, he won't be reformed, and another innocent person or people will pay the ultimate price for this. Anybody who's followed court proceedings for violent chronic offenders knows the usual lines of defense. He was Métis and suffered due to colonialism. He was an addict. He had a rough upbringing, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I couldn't care less. When it gets to sentencing for criminals, the only thing that should be taken into consideration is public safety. How the criminal got there in the first place is irrelevant. Wheeler is clearly so dangerous he should never be free again, yet he will be, and he will reoffend. I do understand. We must study what creates violent repeat offenders. It's important to learn so we might hopefully prevent some violent crimes rather than react to them. Once a person has become a habitual offender, though, and we've identified them, it's time to write them off from society. Reforming criminals must be the priority with new offenders. The best outcome we can all see is that a person has gone off the rails but used their time incarcerated to better themselves and become a functional citizen upon release. We should provide the resources to assist with that rehabilitation in that case, and the investment will often be well worth it. But when the efforts for reform fail and the offender becomes chronic, then it's time to accept reality and remove them from the public, possibly indefinitely. The success rate in reforming chronic offenders is terribly low, and once a criminal's reached that status, the safety and rights of the public must come before those of the offender. It's not just chronic violent criminals who must be incarcerated for long terms. Repeat offenders from thieves to drug dealers need to be removed as well. The cost and societal damage from career criminals can't be understated, even if they aren't directly violent. They cause mistrust, stress, and damage. They've also put the public at risk as they take up law enforcement resources as they're constantly arrested and released. Study after study indicates the vast majority of crimes are committed by a minority of chronic offenders. It stands to reason if we can keep that minority locked up, they can't reoffend. How many times have we got to read about some burglar or car thief that's convicted for their 30th, 50th, or 100th offense? Never mind the multiple murderers out there. The cost to incarcerate, hey, it doesn't have to be that high when it's accepted that that inmate's never going to be released. Resources then don't need to be wasted on rehabilitation, and facilities can be constructed in isolated regions to inexpensively prevent escapes. Call it gulags, if you will. The criminals had a choice. Their victims didn't. And no, I don't support capital punishment. I still don't. I don't trust our legal system or government enough to give it the power to kill a citizen. I do support 100-year sentences, though. The concept of locking up a human forever is a hard one to accept. I can accept that, though, more than watching people being victimized and often killed by criminals we already had in custody and then released. Hey, if a magic pill is invented which cures a chronic criminal, then we can reconsider their interminable incarceration. Until then, though, it's time to warehouse them once we've identified them somewhere secure for the sake of public safety. Rest assured, it'll have a much more positive impact upon crime and crime reduction than chasing people around to seize their antiquated duck hunting guns. When Canada has become more unsafe than the Congo, we know it's time for a reality check. And yes, Gord, that's why I say it's terminally broken. When we got a guy like that who's been in custody and released him and let him kill somebody, and we're going to let him out to kill somebody else in 4.5 years, the system's terminal. All right, that's my rant to get things off on a good note. How's it going, Jen?
Doing good, thanks, Cory. How you doing?
Good. This is the Western Standard's Jen Hodgson, reporter extraordinaire, to give the news update because Dave's indisposed yet again.
Yeah, that's right. Bit under the weather for the last couple of weeks, unfortunately.
Yeah, so there's been a bad bug
going around. Yeah, that's right. So Prime Minister Mark Carney opened the day with an announcement on steel. And rather than going elbows up, quote unquote, against President Trump, instead, there will be no changes to current trade measures. However, Ottawa will be funneling in more than $1 billion into the steel industry on taxpayers' dime.
Good.
Yes, so that'll be $1 billion towards helping the steel industry, helping steel firms, and then another $70 million is going towards worker compensation and those that are affected by the tariffs.
Well, bailouts always work well. I mean, look how well the cricket industry has developed in Ontario, or the battery manufacturing plants. I mean, that's all blossomed for us, hasn't it?
The cricket industry, yeah. You say true words, Cory. And there are some tariff adjustments on non-U.S. countries, most notably the Carney Liberals are cracking down on any country that has their steel poured in China. So they're leveraging tariffs on those countries, I guess, to boost up Canada's tariff war.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. China does provide a lot of steel to Canada. I mean, fair enough. If you're looking at protectionism, that's one of the targets you want to go. You can see what he's doing, though. He's fighting back against China and trying to avoid getting further into a deeper fight with President Trump.
Exactly.
Where our bigger, China's an issue as well. It's a mess. I don't envy Carney. I don't like him, but he's in a tough position. I'll give him that.
Yeah, between China and the U.S. is definitely between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
So next on the news is we're following the Alberta Next panel quite closely here at the Western Standard. So this is a series of panelists that are hearing from Albertans about how they feel on certain issues, such as whether Alberta should have its own police force, whether Alberta should collect income tax rather than having it sent to Ottawa, and whether any kind of pension plan or taxes should be through the Alberta government rather than the federal government. And of course, this is as independent sentiment is on the rise here in Alberta too. So Premier Smith will be up in Edmonton this evening.
Yeah, I guess last night's meeting, the open mic got a little hot, as you'd kind of expect. I mean, she's going to have an interesting time tempering it from the people who are full out just want an independence referendum, want out, or the people who want to talk about and examine some of those other proposals. We'll see if maybe they change some of the structuring types meeting in Edmonton.
Yeah, for sure. And there is nuance to this issue. Some people are approaching it all or nothing. We've completely had enough. And as you say, others are willing to hear out other sides and negotiate. So we'll see what this Alberta Next panel produces over the course of the summer and into September even.
Yeah, she's going to have her hands full. Yeah, that goes for a while.
Yeah, into the end of September, I believe. The end of September, she'll be coming to Calgary with the Alberta Next panel.
Yeah, ending in, we'll have to go to that.
Yeah, we'll have to go check that out. Yeah, Western Standard field trip. Canada's poverty line is being redefined. So the federal government is looking at how they're actually going to define what it means to be poor or living in poverty in Canada. So we'll find out exactly what their definition is of that by the end of the fall.
Oh, boy. I mean, I guess it depends on who they put behind it. Usually you see that as a precursor when they want to start talking universal basic income, right?
Wow, yeah.
Depends on what you're going to measure it against. I mean, if you're measuring against Eastern Africa, well, our poverty line is going to be quite low.
Mm-hmm.
But if we measure it against domestic expectations, it's kind of an arbitrary thing. Nobody's starving or being thrown out the streets with our social safety net.
Mm-hmm.
Where's poverty land?
That's right. Well, they could also lower the poverty line to sort of frame it as though there aren't so many Canadians that are struggling and living in poverty,
and then make themselves look a little better. Look at that, we've pulled all these people out of poverty, or at least we moved the line.
At least we moved the line. Yeah. You can keep winning when you move the goalpost, for sure.
Sure enough, right on.
Yeah. All right. And as for wildfires, so the feds have finally, for the first time ever, sat down and calculated just how much wildfires cost and released a report saying that it's running up into the billions. And also, they established the reasons why they say that there's wildfires rampant, especially in Western Canada. Guess what the first reason is, Cory?
Oh, probably that we elect conservatives, but other than that, it'll be climate change.
Climate change.
Yes.
Yeah, climate change precisely. And as well as population growth was mentioned in that as well. So
we could turn this into an immigration discussion if
exactly.
they really want to go there.
Yeah. So a bit of a surprising acknowledgement by the feds there. And thirdly, they also conceded forest mismanagement played a role.
There is a role for forest management. I'm glad they brought that up, at least. They're having a bit of an honest look at some of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It does actually seem like, it wasn't a widely published report, of course. It took some access to information to get that out, of course. So.
Yeah, and they'll cherry pick what portions they want to use later on. But,
yeah.
So will I.
Oh, we're on to them, aren't we?
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. And finally, we're just speaking a bit before I came on about supply management. Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting poll this week released by Angus Reid that found that Quebec, which isn't really surprising, is the province that most widely supports the supply management system, which has been dubbed the dairy cartel. Basically, I'm sure you've talked about it a lot on your show. I don't need to go into details with your audience, Cory, but it's a quota system for dairy farmers that results in a distortion of the market, a lot of milk products having to be dumped out, inability to sell to American markets. And it's been widely disputed, especially in Western Canada, especially in Alberta by Alberta farmers. So the poll shows that I think it was about a third, or maybe it was lower, about 24% of Albertans, if I remember correctly, support the supply management, and many are opposed. A third point of that study was whether you support, you don't support, or if you're okay with it being used as a bargaining chip in a tariff war. So at first glance at the study, it shows that Canadians are widely opposed to it. However, if you look into the details of it, a large percentage are actually willing to concede that it's not a crucial part of our economy.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. And but I mean, the overall headline I see they've been throwing out is that most Canadians support it. And that's what makes you wonder, well, okay, who consigned the poll? That's what you got to look into, folks. Because some people say, well, it's Angus Reid. Okay, no, that's who did the poll. Who paid the bill? And then when you look at the framing of the questions, but that's a whole separate discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And who was polled, which in this case was the Angus Reid Forum. And you have to ask, well, who was nudged into signing up for the Angus Reid Forum?
That too, but it's interesting. At least it's come into the discussion, because most people, I think that's part of the problem, is most people don't even realize the system is there or what it does. But they are under threat now due to the trade. So,
and if they have heard of it, a lot of people just heard of it through framing from the federal government. Right, as this safety net and this protectionism for farmers, and don't you want to save the farmers, right? When there's a whole other side, it's a very nuanced issue as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for that update. You said there wasn't much news going on today.
Yeah, I guess there's always something to talk about, eh?
Right on. Okay, well, thank you again. I'll let you get back into that newsroom to dig out some more stories on this apparently slow news day.
Yeah, right. My pleasure. Thank you, Cory.
Thank you. So that is our Jen Hodgson. Yeah, as we said, very prolific, lots of stories, lots of stuff coming up out there. That's where I like to remind you folks, we are an independent media outlet. That means we don't take tax dollars. The reason we can pay Jen and me and John over there and the rest of us is because of subscribers. So if you've already subscribed, thank you very much. But if you haven't, get on there, guys. westernstandard.news/subscription, $10 a month, just like an old newspaper subscription. Keeps things rolling for us, keeps us independent, keeps us accountable to you. It's $100 for a year. Take advantage of that volume discount for it. And then we can keep providing these stories that the other outlets just don't want to cover and touch. This is the future of media, is independent media. Yeah, that supply management thing. The funny thing is, I'll just throw a point out before I move on to my guest with this. When they love claiming all these things. A couple, for one, they say it's saving the family farm. Well, I put that out in a recent column. No, actually, in the 70s, we had like 140,000 dairy farms in Canada. Now we have less than 10,000. So if supply management was supposed to save the family farm, it's done a terrible job. By the way, Gord Tulk did some good work on this. I'm going to talk about him with that a little later. As well, the other aspect I'm seeing, they're saying we have to stop it to keep the supply management to stop the big bad American products from coming up because they're terrible dairy and milk products and they're awful and their quality is terrible. Really? Well, and again, if that's the case, you don't need to be protected, do you? Do you not trust Canadian shoppers to pick the better butter? It stinks. All right, let's move on and get to my guest here. And it's Tim Hagstrom. He's had rough treatment, as I said, kind of at the start of the show, from the University of Saskatchewan, or is it Saskatoon?
The University of Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, yes. Okay, it's in Saskatoon.
That's
okay,
right.
I should know these things as a Westerner, but I appreciate it. You haven't taken it lying down, and you're taking the fight back to the university. I guess we'll just kind of start, though. What happened? We'll go from there. You're a law student. There were some policies you wanted to question, and what went from there?
Well, thank you for having me on, Cory. And I'm sorry I didn't get the memo about not wearing jeans in your office.
Well, you can't see that from there. You never mentioned that. I've done some shows with no pants, but they don't need to know that over there. Just
we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yes, this started when I was in the third year of law school in my winter semester in 2022. And I'd just come back from an exchange in Ottawa in the fall, and learned that there was a point of great contention among my classmates, which had to do with an exam accommodation policy, because there is one policy among others for law students at the University of Saskatchewan that is only available to students who self-declare as Indigenous. I want to be clear about this. I never took a view on that policy, but what really concerned me at the time, once I talked to a number of students who were really riled up about this, is I saw students forming into two different factions, and people from opposite factions were adopting these attitudes that I thought were quite corrosive. They didn't want to talk to each other. They didn't see, the highest that could be said, or didn't want to see that in the other side. So that's what I spoke out about. I read out a letter that I'd written to my classmates. You can find it online. And I got punished for that.
Yeah, and it's indicative of a bigger trend. You looked at things from that traditional view. It's the institution of higher learning. It's an area where there's supposed to be discourse. Or if we want to go back to the ancient Greeks, you're supposed to be philosophizing and sharing different notions, even if you differ. And that concept is really quite lost from most post-secondary institutions now. It seems it's a bad groupthink approach.
Well, that's exactly what I'm fighting to defend, and I really believe in that. So the case we have now at the Saskatchewan Court of King's Bench is quite interesting because we've got two expert reports now to explain concepts that are going to be important in this litigation. So one expert report is on the recognized principles of academic freedom, because the University of Saskatchewan Act, which gives the university its powers, requires that the Senate, the board, and the council do things having regard to the recognized principles of academic freedom. And this expert report paints a picture of what I believe in, which is a community of scholars and students who are openly and sincerely discussing things, where the moral and intellectual autonomy of every individual is prized. And to my mind, this is the only way that a university can fulfill its promise to society, which is to discover knowledge and transmit it, and not get stuck in attitudes that prevent people from looking for their blind spots.
Yeah, so it didn't just end with some hostile times. In the end, you've completed your university and such, but you got sanctioned essentially. I mean, there were consequences they laid upon you for this.
Yes. So what happened is I read this letter towards the end of third year, and then as I was just finishing up exams, I received a notice of a complaint that another student had made. I thought it would be dismissed, and it wasn't. Then I thought we could try a mediated conversation to resolve what I thought must be a misunderstanding. That didn't happen. Instead, I was found guilty of having committed harassment by reading this letter. We tried an appeal at the university, and they upheld that decision. So now there's a sanction. There's a reprimand on my file. I don't know if it's been written yet. I'd be interested to read it. And they ordered that I write an apology letter that acknowledged that what I said caused harm. And this would amount to denouncing my own beliefs. I'm not willing to do that.
No, and that's where it starts smacking. I don't want to draw too many close analogies, but of the old oppressive regimes where they would re-educate, and if a person still has been found guilty of stepping outside of the line, yes, forced apologies, forced retractions, and that's not healthy. I mean, unless it's genuine anyways, whether you're right or wrong, forcing apologies is not beneficial.
Well, I agree with that. And it's interesting, when I made submissions to that this hearing board who decided the sanction, I looked at their policy and it says they can request an apology. It doesn't say they can require one. And I told them, if you request an apology from me, it will have no practical effect. You should choose something else because I can't issue that apology.
So kind of getting back to what you questioned, I mean, I know part of it is questioning just the whole process and not allowing you to discuss this, but I mean, just so people know what was underlying with this, is there's a different length of time that self-identified Indigenous students may have to write exams as opposed to other students, which I guess, I mean, it can be debatable on whether Indigenous students just need that extra time and it'll be beneficial, or it is an unfair, racially based change of requirements for different students. I mean, these are the things we should have then discussed if we're going to have it. But the bottom line is what you were told is you don't even talk about it.
That's exactly it. And that policy has been around for a long time at the college. They're wanting to do something about underrepresentation for Indigenous people in the legal profession and at the College of Law. And I think reasonable people can come at that from different angles, including the one that the college has settled on. But what's really an issue in this case is this broader point of, are students even allowed to discuss this? And I think it's important that we're in this litigation wanting to be very precise about what's an issue. So we've uncovered a number of policy documents at the university that actually had a bearing in this case, even though that wasn't quite clear as I was going through the proceedings. And we've brought this second expert report to help explain that. So what we're hoping to persuade the court is that the university has taken a specific an institutional commitment starting in about 2020, the summer of 2020. I don't know if you remember, that was a summer of racial reckoning.
Particularly,
and
it says Idle No More was exploding, no, that was after Idle No More. That was the
summer
Kamloops
of George Floyd, and yes,
issue. There was
Kamloops in Canada.
Yes.
And so what the university did was they committed to doing more about racism. And how they did this is that they appointed an individual to be a special advisor on anti-racism, to establish a committee which had very vast powers at the university. And this person happened to be a post-colonial scholar, which is a very interesting worldview. I don't believe in it at all, but I do respect people's moral and intellectual autonomy. So I respect that people can have that worldview of post-colonial studies.
Yeah.
But what happens once the university takes that on as an institutional commitment? That's what's at issue in this litigation. So what our expert explains is that in this worldview of post-colonial studies, there's a certain degree of moral relativism. They don't completely believe in objective truth. So that's somewhere where I disagree. And the way it manifests specifically is that claims made by Indigenous people are thought to be on a higher level. In some instances, they're not to be questioned at all. And the other sort of precept of this worldview is that every equality of every inequality of outcome between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people must have been caused by some sort of moral depravity that they tend to call white supremacy, or other words like this. What happens when you think that every unequal outcome must be caused by some sort of moral depravity?
Everything is always somebody else's fault. It's not a healthy mindset to take on for oneself for personal growth. I mean, you can face injustice and things are unfair and can happen to people, but when it's really ingrained like that, I mean, it's a questionable approach to give to people.
Well, what it does is it shuts down speech, and that's what we've seen here. The hearing board, I think, read this case as, first of all, there's this debate that was going on about this policy dealing with extra time on exams. And for the hearing board, there is no debate. Of course, that policy is necessary, because if there are unequal outcomes in terms of Indigenous people being represented in the legal profession and so on, it must be caused by white supremacy. There's no defending the outcome. And so there's no critiquing a measure that's meant to level that playing field.
And that unfortunately prevents people from seeking solutions, assuming they're things outside of, white nationalism, supremacy that's been holding it down. I mean, I was kind of talking about that a bit before the show. I've been visiting reserves and sharing video and things. I mean, there's just some socioeconomic challenges that are happening on reserves and in the system, and we can go far enough back as to how it ended up here where it is now. But those are going to hinder people making it to a higher level of post-secondary education. Like, there's some solutions we need to go into much deeper than just constantly pointing the finger at colonialism and white supremacy.
Well, that's exactly right. And I just go back to the point I made earlier, that this vision I have of academic freedom, to me, is the way for universities to fulfill their promise to Canadian society. But one of our experts actually makes this point. It hadn't occurred to me before, but it's quite interesting. If the goal is to have more Indigenous people in a university, in a genuine university experience, you can't turn the university into something that isn't a university, because they're not getting that experience. So I'm here to preserve that experience, and I hope everybody gets access to it, but it's got to still be a university.
Well, yeah, and it becomes unfair. I worry about that as somebody who will rely on professionals and on a number of levels through life, whether it's doctors, lawyers, and such, and you want to pick who you feel is going to be the best person to do that job. And there's that unfairness that starts to come with a double standard going towards certain groups and minorities, whereas even unconsciously, I might start ruling out other individuals because, well, maybe that person went through it without having the proper program and training that I expect in a university. And it actually puts who could be some very fantastic lawyers, doctors, engineers at a disadvantage, because people look out of the corner of their eye, well, was it DEI or were they really get to that position on merit? It's just not doing favors to the Indigenous community.
Well, certainly those are positions that reasonable people can take to critique these policies. I think I understand where the college is coming from as well. They want to do something, and are you going to have some very invasive, detailed application from every single person to find out who needs how much accommodation? They've decided not to do it that way. So, you can argue it both ways, but where the university, I think, really stepped over a line here is all of this bled into disciplinary proceedings. Mm-hmm. They were actually willing to use, in our submissions in court, we say they were willing to use their non-academic misconduct proceedings to enforce, as the appeal board of the university puts it, that they can educate a student that it is inappropriate to discuss that there are Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups of students, and that the non-Indigenous students are treated unfairly. That's why I was punished. So I know that the university doesn't mind separating people into Indigenous and non-Indigenous. They're even happy to make sweeping generalizations on
politics are kind of ingrained, actually.
Yeah, but what I was punished for is suggesting that the wrong group is being treated unfairly.
So beyond the broader problems, which I want to talk about in a minute with this whole attitude, though, with yourself now, do these punitive actions impact your career, or are they going to, or have they?
They have. I like to sort of endure this and not complain much about it. But you asked the question; it's a fair question, and they have. Yeah. As long as these proceedings were ongoing, I had to disclose them. I did some legal work in Saskatchewan. and then I applied to be a lawyer in Alberta. So both law societies regulate that from each province. I had to disclose when these proceedings were ongoing, when a decision came out, and then that gave the law societies the ability to review my good character. So that's been an adventure, let's say. Takes up a lot of time, and it just has affected, I think, my options in terms of being called to the bar as quickly as my peers, and being able to just launch into my profession without this hanging over me as something where I still need to clear my name.
Yeah, and I just wanted to establish that because you have filed a suit against the university, and it's not because you just have your nose out of joint or something. I mean, this has potentially caused serious damages to you. Thus, you want to see that remedied.
Yes. Yeah, I want to see. Actually, I know you said before in this segment you don't have a great degree of faith in our justice system. Mm-hmm. I believe in our justice system. I believe that the court is going to get this case right. I think we've got a strong case. And we're inviting the court to grapple with what happens when a university takes on as an institutional commitment this worldview of post-colonial studies, which isn't receptive to debate about things that they take for granted. And basically, we say it offends the principles of academic freedom. So it's not lawful according to the statute that gives the university its powers, and it offends the charter because our constitution is founded on principles of classical liberalism, where individuals have the freedom to express themselves and opine on matters of the day, including controversial matters.
Yeah, well, and I mean, foundationally, our common law system, I think, is great and has some great things. I just feel it's quite drifted from what it was supposed to be in some cases, particularly criminal law, but that's kind of side down.
Fair enough. This is not a criminal law case, thankfully.
But if they are following the tenets of what should be established in law, then you should be confidently, it should serve you well through this. But I mean, what kind of timeline are you looking at on this now?
It's very hard to say. I think we're past 3 years now from when I first learned of the complaint. We had to sort of march our way through all the proceedings in the university. Now we're at the beginning stages at the Court of King's Bench. It could take many more years.
Yeah,
who knows?
Well, and as you know, again, with the law, it's a system of precedents, though. So, I mean, assuming that things end well as they could for you in this, would this then encourage universities to change or examine their policies? Like, could this have broader reaching implications for them?
We have approached this in a way where I think it could have very, very broad-reaching implications. We're taking on the policies at the University of Saskatchewan that affect all members of that university. The language there is similar to that which you would find in other universities across Canada. And it really takes on the implications of this worldview. The broader worldview is critical social justice, and that's detailed in our experts' report. Anywhere that's happening in a university, this case could have implications.
Yeah, well, I'm just hoping maybe it resets things. As I kind of said before the show, I'm a little concerned as a guy who's getting a little longer in the tooth, and I understand it's the next generation coming up who's going to be running this world when I'm a senior citizen, and I just want to make sure they've had as good and well-rounded an education as possible, and our post-secondary institutions are kind of, I think, at a point of crisis with that. Needs correction. So I guess I'm just hoping your case can help nudge that a little back to where it belongs.
Well, every generation has to fight these battles, I think.
Yeah.
So you've got your eyes on the right issues. I just want to specify, I'm speaking only in my personal capacity, yes. Not for any other organization. Although I'm supported in this case by a charity, I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Yeah, well, and then the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is representing me on a different thing I've got myself into the soup with. I mean, there's good organizations that help us out when we've, if they accept those cases. So there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. So before I let you go, where can people keep track of what's happening with this and what you're up to on this then?
So yes, the organization that is supporting me and making this possible is called Freedoms Advocate. They can be found at freedomsadvocate.ca. They're pretty selective about their cases, so people should be able to find mine pretty quickly. And we rely on donations, so if anybody's inclined and able to make a contribution, they can donate through that website, freedomsadvocate.ca, to the cause of protecting the freedom of speech.
Great, and I just saw you're active with the Runnymede Society. You want to maybe a little audience know what that is or what it's about?
Oh yes. So the Runnymede Society is a special project. It's existed almost for 10 years, and we're at different law schools across Canada. Almost all of them. We're mostly volunteer-led, and we host events to grapple with legal matters of the day with intellectual diversity. So we're taking a different track from what you'd find often in the classroom. And the Runnymede Society it's very important to the organization not to take a position on specific legal issues. It upholds broader principles of constitutionalism, the rule of law, and fundamental freedoms. Even in my case, the organization takes no position. I want to make that clear because people need to be able to come to their own conclusions.
Well, it's the same principles with the university, or you can debate it and discuss it, not taking a stance necessarily. That's the whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you, not taking it laying down. I mean, you could have just kind of finished school, complied with their things, and moved on with your career, but you're trying to do something proactively after the fact to for your own sake, but I think in the broader sake as well. So I appreciate that, and you're coming in to talk to us today.
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Well, and I wish you the best as it, as you said, drags out. It's going to take a while through the courts, but hopefully it gets a good outcome.
I hope so too.
Great.
Thanks again.
Thank you. So yeah, guys, if you want to look it up, Tim Hagstrom, and yes, you can help out with those societies and groups that do help in these things. As I said, the Justice Center is helping me, and then others are helping others. So if you want to kind of lend a hand, because there's more to this, as you can see with the discussion, it's deeper, it's important, and it's going to impact all of us in a way. Even if you're not going to post-secondary institutions, the people who graduate from them are going to have an impact on your life. As I said, professionals, whether it's doctors, lawyers, chemists, engineers, you name it. Let's see what we got going on in the comments here. It's a lot of Vamp Fashions pointing out when the Law Society requires the acceptance of untruth as fact, then bases sentences and career longevity on that. There isn't a legal system. There's religious tyranny. Yeah, the law societies are a whole other ball of wax. I've had guests on here to talk about that. I've talked with Jonathan Dennis and others because they've been given a rough go by the law societies, which are kind of becoming a little too woke and forgetting, I think, what their mandate should be, again, in trying to maintain balance. Law is an interesting area of education in that it's not a hard science like, math, chemistry, physics, where you're going to have some solid rules that are incontrovertible, unless you're extremely woke and say 2 + 2 = 5. But you know what I mean? Law is actually an area where it's an ongoing debate. It's more of a philosophical calling. I mean, it's an important one, but it's one that's changing and flowing with time. So it's hard to come up with solid rules and what's right, what's wrong. And it's up to those lawyers to do that task. And of course, our judges later on tend to come from the legal class. And it was, as I said to Tim, and I didn't expect him to go into that exactly, but I fear for that. When we do DEI on the qualifications to try and get more of people from other particular groups graduating, I worry that we're getting lesser quality graduates, and it must be infuriating. I'm certain there's some Indigenous or Black or other people that graduated from schools and they worked their butts off and they did fantastic and they're brilliant and they've earned every degree and recognition that they've gotten. But they know that some people kind of look out the corner of their eye and say, well, was that DEI? Did they really go through the same process as everybody else? It's unfair to them. Because again, as I said, I to be honest, I would question. I'd have to see, I guess, a longer work time resume if I were in a position of hiring for somebody in one of these positions. But if it was fresh out of school, no, I'll say it bluntly, I wouldn't hire people from those minorities, not because I dislike the minority, but I worry that they wouldn't be as well qualified as some of the others. And this is causing harm to the people it's supposed to help. Getting back to law, getting back to where we're going, getting back to where as I said, our system's in terminal condition. Let's talk about immigration. This is a story some others have probably seen recently. I mean, this is where it gets bizarre too. How are these guys getting on the bench? So this is an Ontario resident, not a Canadian citizen. Let's be clear about that. Tried to buy sex from what he thought was a 15-year-old. Yeah. So it was a sting operation. He was caught for trying to lure a minor. He's a pedophile. Let's say it for what it is. He was given a conditional discharge by the judge. Why? To help him stay in Canada, because he's not a citizen yet. So if he got convicted of this, it might impact his ability to become a citizen. Really? Yes, I want it impacted. The man's a pedophile. He pursues children. I want him the hell out of our country. What kind of judge makes an allowance for scum like this to keep him in? I mean, people say, oh, how do you define who deserves to stay within Canada and who doesn't among immigrants? Well, here's one of the lines that's pretty simple. If they're child predators, we don't want them. Yet a judge couldn't figure that out, made an exception for this man, and said, no, we don't want to convict him because it might impact his ability to become a citizen. What the hell is wrong with you guys? And it's this kind of garbage, this immigration crap that's going on. Speaking of things that get unfair to others, but we've got to clean up our system on who we're accepting, who we aren't. Canada is built on immigration. Immigrants are what make us strong. They bring a work ethic here. They bring professions. They bring their families. They contribute to the country. But there's a bunch within them that don't. There's a bunch that are sick. There's a bunch that cause problems. If you saw that Western Standard story on that gang in Ontario that was busted because they'd been doing home invasions all over the place, and you saw the names and the people participating in it, guys, they were all new Canadians. They should be the hell out of here. Gone. Make room for the people who want to come here and abide by the law. People who want to come here and work and make a living and make a better life for themselves. Why is it so difficult to just look at these things objectively and figure out some of the easy ones, right? Man wants to pick up 15-year-old children and molest them? That's one we don't want. I don't need to be a judge to understand that. I don't need a law degree to understand that. And I'm pretty confident most Canadians will accept that kind of ruling. And it gets to the stupid, an issue that's been big lately too with, the big book ban in Alberta. Oh, the Alberta government's cracking down and banning books. Oh, they're virtual fascists because they're banning books. And then the people start, where do you draw the line? How can we allow people to start judging which books are appropriate for children within children's libraries and which aren't? And I've been posting that on X. It's pretty easy to draw the line on some of them because one of the books that was in Alberta schools in front of children in a library depicted a couple of men going down on each other. Guess what? There's one you can safely remove from the list. Is it really that complicated? Was it really that hard? Do you really need to allow it all? No. Pull the porn. It's not that complicated. But these navel gazers, these hammerheads, then I really wonder where their interests are, who want to get that in front of our kids. And then there are people saying, they're pulling it because of homophobia. No, they're pulling it because it's friggin' porn. And, I saw somebody speaking on X who said it well. He's a gentleman from the LGBTQ community who said, why is this always sexualized anyways? They can discuss LGBTQ things with kids as they're growing, as they're figuring out who they are and what they're going to be, without going into, by the way, here's the better way to give a man head. It doesn't, they reduced it to the sexual component. There's more to being gay than having sex with each other, isn't there? There's the relationship. But these nutcases we get into these positions, judges, higher education, our public education system, where they really can't figure out what's porn or what's not, what's appropriate to become in front of kids, what's not. Again, getting back to where Gordon maybe thought I was exaggerating when I say things are in terminal condition. Well, when we're seeing stuff like this going on, I'd say it's getting a little terminal. If we have a society that really can't figure out when porn is appropriate to put in front of children or not, yeah, we got a terminal problem, guys. And we got to talk bluntly to it. We got to accept it. We got to get realistic about it. Another one. I'm going to just stir up the anti-vaccination folks among ions. The measles outbreak, it's been getting big. It's been getting wider. Look, folks, it's 100% preventable. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of talking about all vaccinations. Most people were talking about with the COVID thing, which is separate. They're saying, I accept all the old vaccinations, the proven ones, the polio, the measles, the rubella, the mumps, whatever, all that. Well, not everybody did, obviously, because there haven't been enough vaccinations, and now measles is going around, and we don't need it to be going around. I know it's not the most harmful disease in the world, but it's still one you don't want your kids getting if you don't have to. I don't believe in vaccine mandates. Never have, never will. It has to be a choice. It must be a choice. And I think part of the reason people aren't taking it up is because the bloody coercion and crap that came out during COVID, the government actually built the mistrust that led to fewer people getting the vaccinations. But guys, please look into it. We don't need to be battling measles. This is one that should be behind us. So keep it in mind. All right, lots going on. Check in for the pipeline. It's going to come on a little bit later tonight. And the rest of our stuff, be sure to share our links, subscribe, all that good stuff. Send me emails if you got more you want covered, stories, ideas, things like that. And of course, take out a subscription with the Standard if you haven't already. So thank you again for tuning in today, guys, and we'll see you next week at this time.